Explicit measures, pump it up, be it high. Tommy and Mike lighting up the sky. Dance to the data, laughs in the mix. Fabric and AI, get your fix. Explicit measures, drop the beat now. Podcast kings, feel the crowd. Explicit measures. Explicit measures. Drop it loud.
Welcome back to the Explicit Measures Podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the show. Tommy, good morning. How are you doing?
Good morning, Mike. It's another great day in Chicago.
We are recording this episode, so this is a pre-recorded episode, but today in Chicago and Milwaukee area, it is going to be warm for us. It is the end of February for us, and we're getting 50-degree days, which is absolutely unheard of in our area. So very excited about that. That's going to be fun. I'll have to actually get out of my house and out of my basement and go walk around for a little bit.
You know, they actually said there's 5 seasons in Chicago.
So
Okay,
let's hear it.
spring, summer, fall, winter, and then the spring of disillusionment, or the spring
The spring of disappointment.
yeah, because you get these days, you're like, oh, I guess the winter's over, then it's going to probably snow again. So
It's not. Yes, exactly right. All right. Our main topic for today is going to be talking about the difference between published to web and embedded. And we're going to kind of focus more on security and public facing reports. What is the right place to put some of this stuff? Now, Tommy, you know, I'm very slanted in this direction. I've done a ton of work around embedded, but I do want to really unpack what is going on here. And I think there's a lot of confusion around what is embedded. When should I be thinking about embedded? What's the right time to use embedded? So we're really just going to unpack this. And also I want to layer this lens of like, what does security mean? How do we understand licensing in lieu of security considerations as you pick through these solutions, embedded or published to web? So I think that's a really important topic. I don't think enough of people talking about it. And every time I see things on like Reddit or LinkedIn, there's a lot of questions about like, what is it? How do we best utilize it? So this will kind of give you the skinny of all the details there.
love it.
Before we do that, I do have a beat from the street, Tommy. And today is a pre-recorded episode, so this is going to be airing on 3/19. That's the day of this episode. So in lieu of that, this is weird because I'm talking about it on the day of we're actually deploying this, but
If I set it up right on the scheduling.
if the schedule's correct. I've already just completed, we're at FabCon right now, and at Fabric Conference, I just completed the full day pre-con session around agentic development. So I just want to kind of point out, as I'm preparing for and have given the talk, this is kind of all bundled together as a thought, agentic development or building experiences around building things with Power BI using AI models. It's really interesting. And there's a lot of things you need to understand in this realm. I'm having a lot of aha moments, Tommy. As I'm preparing the content, how do you start doing this? You start thinking about, well, what is VS Code? How do you use it? Where is the MCP server? There's now 2 MCP servers that are out. There's one for Power BI MCP server, modeling and handling things at the tabular model level. And then there's another one for Fabric, the Fabric MCP server. And I guarantee you, there's probably going to be more announcements around anything MCP related to the Microsoft Fabric and SQL conference all rolled together. So there's probably going to be more things coming to as well. So stay tuned for all the announcements at FabCon. There's going to be a lot of great things coming out there additionally. That being said, I'm having this realization, Tommy, of there's this concept of what I'm calling the agentic loop. The ability for the agent to see what it built. For example, let me give you some things that we're working on in the class that I'm kind of having an aha moment around, right? When you save a Power BI file, you can save it as a PBIP project. Great. All the files are exposed. You can see everything inside the files. This is really good for letting the AI or agent see the structure of your report, the structure of the semantic model. It's all there. Easy to use and interact with. The downside is the agent doesn't necessarily understand everything that it builds. So, for example, if you go into a TIMDL file and say, hey, agent, go add a description, it thinks a description is a key value pair on how the TIMDL works. But in reality, descriptions are not that inside TIMDL. The actual description is a 3/ in front of the measure or the column that actually says, this is a comment. We're going to add a comment on top of, or the description on top of this cell or whatever. So it's kind of a bit more human readable. It's not pure JSON like you would, or
YAML.
pure YAML like you would normally see it. It's slightly different. It's been tweaked slightly for what the needs of working with semantic models are. I will say this around the agentic loop side, right? So I can make a change, and if you're using just Timdal, the agent will say, "Oh, I think I know what you want," and do the change. That change may or may not be acceptable to the actual semantic model. So, for example, you can make the column called, or the property called description on every single column or measure. But if you try and save that, Power BI will then freak out and say, "I don't know what this is. You can't have this description field. This doesn't make sense." And you won't see any descriptions. So there's actually a hard set of rules that need to be applied when you're doing this. So how do you solve this? There's two ways to solve this. One is you can use skills. So skills, Tommy, you've been also exploring with, and you've been telling me how amazingly powerful they are. So good. A skill is basically you work with an agentic experience, a chat, and at the end of the chat or the experience, I want you to document what you did.
Yeah.
What are the steps that you needed to accomplish? What were the pieces of information you needed to go get? That's the skill. So by adding skills to your development environment, you can easily get the agent to understand, oh, this is how I write Timdal. This is the spec of it. This is how I add comments. This is how I write measures. The formatting is now taken care of by the agent. So the agent has more awareness of how that's working. So one, that's a solution here. The other thing we were discovering was, and Matthias Tierbach is also working on the workshop with me, so we're also going through this together a little bit, both discovering things. The other thing was, if you're using the Power BI MCP server, this is where the agentic loop kicks in. So you could say, hey, agent, go build me a bunch of measures. And what it can do is it can build a series of measures in the model. It has a skill. The MCP server knows how to do it. There's a tool, basically. It's called a tool. The tool knows how to write a measure, knows how to go get a column, knows how to write things. So one, a lot of this learning that you'd have to do with skills are now just being, one, taken care of automatically by the MCP server. But if it screws up and does something wrong, it actually has the ability to go test its own solution. So when I talk about the agentic loop, it's have it build something, test what it built, and then go back and update, get a confirmation. Did it work? Yes, move on. If it didn't work, fail, go back and rethink what you did. And so there's this cycle, and this is what we do when we build stuff, Tommy, all the time. We build something, we go test it. Did it work as I expected? If yes, then we move on. If no, then we go back to the problem and say, what did I think wrong? I need to rethink it. This is the exact same process that I go through for developing new solutions or new software, all these things. So this agentic loop piece is so powerful. And this is where I think I'm still trying to figure out how to best leverage this.
So let me give a little more love to the skill, or kind of frame it a little more expanded, because give it a credit it's due. So you're talking about it's it's a set of instructions, but it's a lot more than that, Mike, because think of a skill in any agentic solution as almost a package that you would install with Python or Spark, because really what it is, or what it can be, it can expound to patterns. For example, Mike, I was showing you something the other day, and not only can it show basically, here's not just a set of instructions, how I want you to follow things, but it can even process code. For example, I have a set of Markdown. I can provide it a script to say, hey, whenever I say publish to PDF, or, whenever we want to do a PDF, use this CSS style sheet and use the pandoc to, publish this and make a PDF out of. So you can have these set of code actions, or even the set of patterns and context. So I would say saying that it's just a set of instructions is not giving it the due credit that it really deserves. So it can be code based, but it can also be even for marketing, for podcasts, for even for notebooks. You can have basically, hey, I'm working with notebooks here. Here are, the common functions that I like to use. Here are the things that we always connect to a lakehouse. Ask me which lakehouse, and then use this API to pull the lakehouse ID from. And it has that context and set of different files. It's more than just a single system instructions that we're used to. So it's actually it's a directory of information that it can pull from. And it has a final, the most important part of any skill is the skill.md, which basically says how to pertain to the directory, a folder of a skill. And Mike, there is a cool thing in Claude where it's actually a skill builder. They built a skill
Yes.
builder, which I use all the time.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
just saying system instructions, dude, it is so much more.
And I think that's why it's called, I mean, that's kind of it's a great context adder, Tommy, because I think this, when we talk about the skill, right? Skills are more encompassing than, to your point, than just it's a list of instructions. It's right. You can have, so Claude Code, I think, is kind of leading the helm here on like what is a good skill or what skills should look like.
Oh yeah.
They've got skills. They have a skill builder. There's a whole framework that they have around how to use like a folder structure to encapsulate the skill, right? Here's the name of the skill. Here's the description of the skill. Okay, if you need more information, here are examples and code and other. So you have a whole folder structure that can be used to support what the skill is doing. The neat part about this, Tommy, is like when we think about agentic experiences, while that session context window is open, that's all that it knows. So it has a very short kind of memory while you're talking to it. And if you don't supply it with a way to go find and discover what it needs to understand before doing the task, it has no way of having a memory of session to session. And I think this is what people are kind of discovering now is, look, how do we build persistent memory skills and memory and these long running tasks? I see people already talking about like using like an ontology to capture every conversation that you've had with an agent. And when you ask it questions, it can then go back and search and have a really highly efficient search way of finding old conversations. I think this is kind of how my brain works in general. You have to, sometimes you'll tell me something. Oh, hey, Mike, remember that conversation we had, a year ago? I'm like, I'm not quite sure. Can you give me a couple more details to remind me of what we talked about? And as you give me some more details, I'm able to recall the memory. Oh, that's what we were talking. Yes, I do remember. Let me give you the additional context that I know. And I think this is a very similar approach to what we're seeing now with agents is skills, memory, and being able to recall this when needed to use
Do you remember
them.
The Matrix? Do you remember The Matrix, right? The movie?
Oh, I love the Matrix movies.
You know what a skill is?
Yeah.
Do you remember one of the more famous?
Neo would put the thing in the back of his head, and I know karate.
I know kung fu. That's basically what we're doing when we build a skill. And not to let us off the hook too easily, Mike. Let's not forget how ridiculous when we sound when we talk about all of this. I called a friend too to tell him one of the skills I built, and he's not so much in the AI; he's more graphic design. I'm like, Mike, another buddy named Mike. I was like,
happened to be another Mike.
Or Mike, and I was like, it's a Claude, it's a skill, and he just starts laughing. I'm like, what? He's like, these names are ridiculous. I'm like, yeah, and there's llamas too. So it is funny how we still use this lingo. People, if you're listening, and I'm really interested to know how many people are using the tools that we talk about, because you and I,
let us know in the
by
chat.
virtue, I think just by virtue of our own personalities and being able to be independent, like we're always going to be on the forefront just because that's what intrigues us, and we like beta testing. But I would love to hear from people if they're using it, if they're struggling to use it, if they're dabbling in it, even if tips for us too. By no means are we the perfect experts here or close to that. So I would love to hear if people are resonating with this or have tried using it because we talk about it so much.
I think the reason we talk, so I'm gonna just, maybe this is a bit of a justification of why we talk about this so much. I think one of the reasons why, Tommy, I really enjoy this. One, I love learning new things. This feels to me like when we had Power BI come out. When Power BI was announced, I felt this is going to rock people's worlds. It's going to change how people want to build things. It's going to be fundamentally different after learning this thing. And here we are, 10 years later, the run is still strong. We're still growing Power BI. Now we're growing into Fabric. And I think in the same way that Power BI made reporting a commodity, like a commodity meaning everyone can now build reports, everyone can now create good-looking interactive dashboard things. Very interesting. Now, add to that now this new agentic space where, before we were just building reports for the masses. Well, how about building entire applications for the masses? How does that influence now? What is that going to do for us? And so I think as I look at this and I go, wow, this is really interesting as to what's happening now. This is what I feel like is the same wave of interest and excitement that we're getting around Power BI when it originally came out. And so I'm very engaged. We all got to learn. I feel like I'm so far every day. I feel like I'm so far behind. It's happening so fast. My entire world. I mean, I used to do a little bit of like social media, more so like publishing what we do here on the podcast, because that's really what we do. I do that on social. But I've basically have dropped out of everything not X and not GitHub. GitHub is my new social media platform.
This is what we talked about this a while ago. I said, if you had to drop one of the three, YouTube, Twitter, or X, or GitHub, I said the one I would not drop was GitHub.
Yep. I think that's, and now that has all the more reinforced what we're doing. And I think I use the Twitter, the X feed. There's a lot of really smart people in there that are sharing what they are learning about agents and agentic things. A lot of my articles and videos and things that I'm getting introduced to are coming from very smart people there. And then they're all sharing stuff on GitHub. And so I'm constantly reading through README files on project after project after project now, because they're so intriguing. And there's so much happening.
I got some beef with people on Twitter, Mike. I got to share this. And I do get a lot of my information there just because it is a good source for Power BI and especially AI. But is there a way I can filter out the people who say, I use AI and I made $10,000 today just because I use this agentic thing? And if you don't
know, because they're so intriguing and there's so much happening.
I got some beef with people on Twitter, Mike. I got to share this. And I do get a lot of my information. If you don't do this, you're missing out. I don't want
too sales pitchy to me. You're right.
I'm telling my kids not to use the word hate. And so I don't want to be a hypocrite here, but they cannot stand people like that, who are like, no, I just did this and I made $15,000 just because I have 1,800 agents. First off, no, you don't. No, you don't. This didn't happen. I know it didn't happen, kind of thing. So like, I can tell you that kind of thing.
To be real, like with you, I agree with you, Tommy. There's also a number of messages as I've run agents nonstop all night long, and one of the skills I think that's going to be needed here. And again, I'm seeing this as a skill because I don't have it yet. I'm still working through this, right? Right now, a lot of my interactions are like, do this, and it does a good job of like building something. Again, back to my earlier comment around this agentic loop, build something, test it, come back, fix it, build it, test it, fix it, and then go on to the next thing. That is a very strong pattern.
Yeah.
And the skill that is required here moving forward is how can you orchestrate 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 agents at a time? The new software developer, I think this is very much true. The new software developer or the new developer in general will move towards how can I become the most efficient requirements builder to clearly explain what we're trying to accomplish and build, and then get as many agents as possible to run consecutively at the same time to build something productive as an output. And so I think the new method here is most software engineers are going to need to turn into a architect, a requirements gatherer, a requirements describer. And this is where I think this is going to be really interesting, because we have already these BI analysts that are already doing this. Like, so let's take the software side away from things. Let's just talk about BI analysts and going to the business and saying, what do you need? How can I help?
Offline.
We just, this is such a good transition for these people. Like, don't worry about your jobs leaving. You're actually going to be needed more. And what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to interpret a lot of what the business needed. Tommy, we've had arguments about this long time, which is your team isn't big enough to support all the reporting needs of your business.
Yeah. I don't think we've ever argued about that. I think we've always agreed on that.
Well, maybe we've had words, like unpack the concept, like, so I've been pushing more for like a federated approach. Like, you need to have someone in both. I still think that's very much applicable. But what about the person who's now a 10x analyst? And what if you start using agentic tools to have let me see, how do I say this again? We need to start planning our projects in what is the human capital that we need to get the project done, and what is the agentic capital that we need to get the project done. Because the agentic side can go way faster than the human side. I still need people to talk to my business, to understand the requirements, to structure the data of how we represent and build our company. But once we have that, the next skill will be business analysts need to take that skill and conform it into these are proper instructions we can go give our army of agents, and we can build hundreds, if not thousands, of reports that meet the specific needs of these people. And to my point earlier, which is we don't need to build lots of reports. We need to build ones that are making you money or saving you money.
I got a question for
The
you.
hard part is if you can build reports now with a prompt, that changes the game yet again. And you can test a lot more different kinds of reports to see if they're valuable. And it's going to increase the need for quality checks. It's going to increase the need to say which reports are actually being used and are useful. So the CRUD process, create, read, update, delete, or destroy, CRUD, we're going to have to emphasize a lot more on the updating and deleting side a lot more, because there's going to be so much more stuff created. We're going to have to figure out how to sunset that
content. You bring
up
a very interesting topic here, and I'm going to ask you a question because you and I have seen a lot of success, I think, in the AI realm and Fabric and Power BI specifically, because we have the 10 years, the 20 years combined of doing, it manually. That's weird to say manually, but just doing it normally, right? So
looking the clicks and doing the buttons. And
so you and I have 20 years of that. So it's easy to transition to that conductor side, to the orchestrating the agents around Tyndall and orchestrating the agents around the workflow, because you and I know front to back how Power BI works, how the data flows through an organization, where it works, where it doesn't. We know how to gather requirements because we've learned the hard way. And by the hard way, I mean, I've made a lot of mistakes gathering requirements, and we've done that over and over and over again. So now I can set up a workflow that replicates that. So the question I have for you, Mike, just like I want all my kids to work in the service industry, in the food industry at some point before they have, go to college, so they learn and figure it out.
My son just did that. And he learned a lot, and he's like, wow, this is hard work. It is hard work. And you got a lot of people to deal with.
In the same fashion, is there an argument to be made that you don't give someone AI until they're an expert in that area? So, because here's the thing, like
great question.
We were talking about something offline, like, building out some documentation. And the only reason I had a skill to build it is I knew what skill to build. And I knew what the format and the structure and, and the knowledge there. Now I don't have to worry about formatting or the tedious effort. So let me ask you that. Is there a conversation to be had there around, I'm not giving you AI until you deserve it, until you're ready for it in your area?
There's a conversation to be had here around how do you deal with the transition versus how do you deal with once the transition's occurred. I think what you're speaking to is about the transition, right? I don't want to give you AI because it's too undefined for what it should be doing, because we're standing in two worlds right now. We're standing in the old world of like clicks and building reports and doing things manually, right? Even that is somewhat automated nowadays. But like we have this manual world of like non-agentic development, and now we're stepping into this new world, which is the agentic development cycle. So I want to look at it two lenses. I think to your point, Tommy, in the transition phase, as we move into this new world, you're right. I don't think I want to give you tools that are straight up super ultra powerful and can get you really like, there's nothing worse than giving you a tool that can do everything, but you just don't know how to use it. Here's a Ferrari 16-year-old, go drive to school without crashing. Like, you've given too much capability to that person. Now, I would argue after a number of years and some training and education, and like, so, the 16-year-old grows up, he's now older, or he or she's now older, and they now have more experience driving. Now you can give a more performant car, or a Ferrari to again, aside from the price of it, you never give anyone a Ferrari because it's just so expensive. But the idea is like, as the skills increase, what you do or what you have capability of doing will change as well. So I would argue in 6 months to a year from now, when everyone is just using agentic development patterns, what you need to give people will be totally different. we're not going to be saying you need to understand how the report is built. You can literally talk to the report or talk to something and say, report, I need 3 visuals on this page with this stuff. And you don't have to go through the manual clicks anymore, because that actually will be evacuated from the system. It won't be there anymore. It'll that mentality of building will cease to exist. Does that make sense? What I'm saying?
I like it. I'm going to make a statement I don't think you're going to like here. It's going to be a blanket statement.
It's okay.
And all those never go over well.
Well, give me a percentage, because that's usually what you do, and that makes me like, I'm like, I think about 15.5% of people will.
I was just going to say,
always use quad code.
We tried that bit. That bit didn't work. Those bits don't work.
How do we even measure this?
I tried those bits. Those obviously did not resonate. So.
Well, not with me. They may resonate with other people, but I
no
love your numbers. You're like, just
you got to measure it, man. You got to measure it. There's got to be somewhat you start with.
100%,
anyways,
dude.
I think
100%
in any industry, and I'll take Power BI. I don't think you should have AI capabilities until you're certified in something, so you can be a conductor. Honestly, I don't. As I'm saying that in my head, it sounds from an AI responsibility, which we haven't talked about a lot. You and I are just like, oh, look, a new open source thing, download, install. And that's great. But for an organization, if you're going to hand the reins, to your point, you give someone a Ferrari, but also take someone not to drive it off the cliff. So I would challenge, or I'm going to make an argument here, and then I move on, but that you don't get AI capabilities until you are certified in the thing you're going to use AI for.
That works in the transition stage. Yes. Once I agree with you. I do agree with you. Like, I think that is the right approach for the transition stage. But there's 2 stages we're talking about here. There's a transition stage of like the early adopters when you're starting to do this. And this would be what I would agree with, right? What is a skill? There's a lot of knowledge that's coming along with this, right? That's the adoption stage. Once we get through the adoption stage, I would then probably say that statement's not necessarily true, because you're already going to have a lot of mental context around how do you use the agent? What can you do with it? And the tooling will get better, and the amount of things you can say to it will get better, and you will stop having to say, you won't have to learn all the things. Like, imagine stepping into something that is, so one last thought here, Tommy, we should move on because we do have an actual topic to talk about. The last thought here is, in my class, when we're talking about agentic development, one of the things that's very interesting is when you use the Power BI MCP server, you can use chatbots to talk to the model directly. Hey, what measures do I have? What tables are facts? Which tables are dimensions? I was going through this experience, and actually, I didn't really understand what can the MCP server do. And so the trick here is you actually ask the agent, what does this MVP or this MCP tooling actually do, and how can I use it? What are good examples? And the documentation of the tooling of the MCP server is actually enough to have the agent tell you, hey, I'm here. These are the things I'm capable of. So think of it this way. As we get out of the adoption phase and we move into this is part of our build process, this is the standard way we think, the tools themselves are the teaching elements you're going to use to get going. And so the barrier for you and I, Tommy, to teach more people how to use the tools is going to continue to drop to be easier and easier and easier. And as tools get more advanced, we will build into the tools their own documentation, because if the agent needs to understand how to use them, it needs to be able to communicate that back to the user who's trying to use the tools of the MCP server. So I'm thinking like it starts today with we got to have some knowledge so you don't do unsafe things. But in the future, it becomes everyone's going to know how to do it, and the tools themselves will be the educators of how to use them. You
just got a new topic on the board. I think you're going to like this one, and then this is our new topic. We'll put it on the schedule. Does AI drive your center of excellence?
I think it does. That's great.
I have it on. I have it on our board. So
love it. Let's talk about it.
All right, we got a mailbag, Mike.
Dig it.
Again, mailbag.
Let's hit it. Mailbag.
March Mania, mailbag mania. And again, it's about embedding. So let's dive in. Again, guys, people, girls and gals, guys and gals, put your name on. We like shouting out who
At least the first name, or just put Tommy's name on
or
everything.
Mike
I don't care.
DiCarlo, yeah. So I don't care if it says, built generated by AI. Just put your name. We appreciate knowing who you are, even if we can't see your face.
Yeah,
So here we go.
Great question.
Hello. I heard you guys are making a series about Power BI embedding. I don't think we are, but I would love to know the difference of published to web and embedded in a scenario where a report is embedded to a public site. Security-wise, is embedded any safer when it's shared with the public? Is there a way to get into row-level details like in published to web? Are there measures one can take to make it more secure? For example, disabling URL query parameters if the underlying data is very granular. So, Mike, right off the bat, there's a few things here I think we got to correct. Really appreciate the question, but a little
great question. But this is exactly why we're talking about this one, right? This is where I think exactly what we were talking about earlier, which is there's a little bit of confusion around what is Power BI embedding, how would we set it up, what is possible there, and then let's overlay the security conversation on top of all that. Yeah, Tommy, you want to correct a couple of things? Go ahead.
Let's do a few things here. So first off, you can't embed it to a public site and embed a report, or if you try to, it's not going to work for anyone unless they sign in. Embedding in Power BI is basically with the security blanket of Entra ID. You do not get access unless you have access in Power BI. Even if you put it on your blog, if you put it on your WordPress site, it's going to show an error. It's not, or you got to sign in with your Entra ID. So right off the bat, that's one thing that published to web, available to anyone, doesn't matter who it is. If you have got the URL, or if you can find the URL, you can do it. Embedded, you need a way to sign in some capacity.
And Microsoft has added, so when published to web, so there's only two options initially.
Right.
So let's go a little bit of history here. There's another little history here, a little history lesson. We're going to go through this one again. This is the 20 years of knowledge between Tommy and I that we're going to be drawing on here from this one. I'll be pulling from my ontology of knowledge to get this together here. So published to web and embedded was initially the landing spot for when we wanted to get reports out to non-PowerBI.com users. Okay, so let's be very clear.
Yes.
When you're licensing, okay, so licensing to get to PowerBI.com, a user to show up there, there's always licensing involved. And then you need like a free license to get to My Workspace. You need a pro license or premium per user license to use Workspaces.
Premium,
and if you are on an F64,
the same license.
If you're on yes, correct. And if you're in a premium per user workspace, all the users of that workspace must be premium per user. Then there's this other level, which is like, okay, now I'm moving over to the Fabric SKUs. Fabric SKUs allow embedding from like external embedding, right? So these are generating reports and sending reports out to the web and non-PowerBI.com experiences. See a report not in PowerBI.com. That happens at F2 all the way through all the F SKUs. You can embed things anywhere at any level there. However, there's two types of embedding that we're talking about. There's so many nuances here that's going on. This is literally like a rabbit trail. That's why we're talking about this one. Inside the embedding space, you have a embed for my users, or my app owns data, and a user owns data methodology. A user owns data methodology means Microsoft is going to supply the identity provider to you to help you authenticate into the report.
Great point.
The user owns data embedding scenario is supported at an F64 and higher for internal users of your organization. Anything below an F64, you're not supposed to use embedded user owns data applications. If you're using the embed for external users, so that's the other embedded scenario, that runs through all the FSKUs. But Microsoft is saying, we are no longer going to manage your identity providing. You, as the app developer or whatever you're doing, are going to have to roll your own identity. That's the advantage of using embedded. Okay. I'm going to come back really briefly to publish to web. Should I pause there, Tony? Is that too much?
I think really the layman's term or the elevator pitch there is embedding needs a level of authentication at any capacity. So let's.
Well, yes and no. Like yes. I'm going to say yes, but there's and that's so good. Let's talk about that next. Okay. So we've talked about the different licensing, who has access to it. And again, a lot of this embedding thing is what I want to hang on here is what is available for users to access at PowerBI.com level. That's a big differentiator for a lot of this. Let's go back to publish to web. Publish to web was initially, you publish this report, it goes to the internet, that's it. You can't, there's no restrictions, there's no sign in. You publish to web, and it immediately publishes the report for anyone who has the URL to go look at it. Okay. Inside publish to web, that was not a great solution all the time. Sometimes people actually wanted people to sign in.
Internal organizations.
For whatever reason, here's a publish to web link, but I need you to sign in to make sure we have access to your thing. So publish to web actually comes in two flavors now. There's true publish to web, and there's secure publish to web. If you just use publish to web, you're making the report wide open to anyone. This is great for like government organizations, anything that has to be publicly available. Hey, I'm going to be doing an earnings report on our company, and we are a publicly traded company, and I want to just everyone can have access to it.
Like that's just exactly.
Hey, I'm doing a fun little side project and I'm going to build a stock report. Stock information is already publicly available. I'm going to go straight to the internet. I'll build a report and I'm going to publish it, right? Anyone can see it. So anything that's non-secretive or data that you're allowing to be shared publicly, that's a great candidate for just the standard publish to web. The flip side of this is there's a second option called secure publish to web or secure embed. And that's where you basically get a URL, an iframe, you can go use anywhere you want. But when a user goes there, they need to sign in. They have to sign in. There's going to be a button that says, hey, I see the report. Here it is. User, you must sign in and authenticate who you are so I can verify that you're the right person and
do I know you?
Correct. And so that's the second wave, and that was recently added. So that one's a newer thing, secure publish to web. And I'll just kind of pause there. Any comments around this?
No, I think right now you're spot on in terms of, I think I'm just going through the mailbag to see if we were missing anything that's misleading. So the other thing too is with embedded solutions. One of the things that was mentioned in the mailbag is using query parameters. This is a great feature that can be used on Power BI existing reports or anything that's embedded in an organization, where what I can do is filter the report using the URL. This has been around, I feel like, since the early days. I know at least since 2017, where if I want to access the report either in PowerBI.com or embedded, I can add to the frame or to the URL link a filter query on the model, table, column, and what it equals. And this is a great solution. To my knowledge, Mike, and I'm not going to be all knowing here, but I am pretty dang sure that is not available in publish to web on a public facing. This is embedded or in Power BI only.
This is a great distinction. So now we're going to talk some of the security pieces, right? So all of this was just where can I put the report? So let's unpack what we mean by embedding, right? So
let's talk about the data. There's one thing about the access and what you see, and then there's the underlying information.
Exactly. This is the next layer of this onion. So the first layer, the surface layer of this onion is, okay, how do we get the report to other people? Where do we want to distribute the report through? So let me go back to this question here. The first question was published to web and embedded in a scenario where the report is embedded on a public site. You most certainly can do that. The standard publish to web experience, the one I talked about, the non-secure publish to web will let you land the report as an iframe with just a simple URL on any public facing website. If you can put a URL somewhere, that link will work, bar none. It doesn't cost you anything extra. You're not spending a lot of extra compute. It's just a service you get as part of that. And you can embed that from anywhere you want. And I recommend when you're doing things like this, I would highly recommend build a dedicated workspace for all the reports that you're going to publish to web and just kind of collect them there. That is your publish to web workspace. And the idea is everything, the design of that workspace is everything we need to publish to web goes into that one workspace. Why do I say this? I say this because it's a best practice to have a single point of contact so you know where everything is getting published to web. Also, you can give access to create content creators to the workspace, and you can then also add in the publish to web setting, in the admin settings, you want a limited number of people who can actually publish to web. So I think if you're going to turn on publish to web and you're going to do it on a public website, you need to do some substantial training and even have an agreement with your employees, people that are going to be doing this, because if you don't do that, someone may publish something to web thinking it's just easier and actually be publishing secrets of your company. That is a big no-no, and you need to make you're very clear with that individual. This workspace is only for publish to web. You're only allowed to publish things that are publicly available data, and I need to make sure that you understand the implications of what would happen to your job if you accidentally publish something that's non-published to web. Does that make sense?
And I think that you're getting to really the model part of the publishing side, because there's one, the display. So when I embed a report, Mike, I can still have the ability to do row level security or even column level security, or object level security. Excuse me.
Object level security.
Object level,
RLS or
OLS. Yeah. So I was like, well, that doesn't sound right.
Correct.
Exactly, that's available with embedded, again, because it follows the authentication. Publish to web, while the model itself is technically not available, like to see the underlying data in a publish to web, there is no ability, because there is no authentication, to restrict what's available or seen in that report. What you see is a WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get for everyone. Embedded,
and that's with publish to web. And then I think
the public publish to web.
The other side of this is secure publish to web, and that's one I got to just double check on myself. That's one I'm pretty sure row level security is obeyed there, just because it is part of,
as long as there's authentication.
That has an authentication. Like, you have to sign in. And to be clear, when you're using secure publish to web, it has to be a user in your Entra ID and has access to see the report. Meaning, if you're using row level security and that is set up, that user needs to exist somewhere, so we can tie who is the user, apply the filters to the semantic model, and then filter things down.
The rule of thumb.
When we're talking, I'm going to call this other example here, like you're saying, embedding. I'm going to call it pure embedding, right? Pure embedding means I'm not using anything related to publish to web. There's a property in the embedding experience called custom data. Custom data is what you use to pass the user information into the semantic model using the user principal name or username. And so that handshake between I'm this user showing up to this report then allows the semantic model to say, oh, I now know who you are. I will then apply filters before rendering the report. So there's no security holes here. The act of getting the approval to even render the report, you're already sending in a credential that says, I know who you are, and I know what you should see. I will only resolve data back to you using your identity or what you're filtered down
Mike,
to.
this may be the only time in the podcast where people are actually wishing we went back to talking about AI.
This is going to get...
no, but this is necessary. It's necessary. So
it's necessary, but it's also highly complex. I mean, so this is where...
This is not an easy one.
You really need...
not straightforward.
You need to understand the handshaking of, like, what's going on at PowerBI.com? What's going on in licensing? How do I embed it into this thing? What is this row of security? Where does the identity of the user come from? How do I pass that back to the report? And ultimately the semantic model. There's a ton of stuff here. And some other, really useful things. Publish to web and secure publish to web, you can only look at reports. View only. That's all that it is. When you move into what I'm going to call pure embedding allows you to view reports, add row level security. You can also have edit reports, create new reports. You can, like what we do in one of our apps that we have, Intelexos, we actually let you connect to the semantic model. I can run queries using row level security and embed the output of semantic model details. So I have a table explorer where you can explore your data and look at them just the way you would do exploring inside Power BI. The capabilities of you as a developer that open up when you go into embedding is like tenfold.
And this is the misnomer.
This is the misnomer
a lot of people have on the two options, where they're like, well, if I'm embedding in Power BI, for most, I remember we had the conversation about report developers. For most report developers, when they consider embedding, They're considering
Mhm.
SharePoint or Teams or some maybe internal application where we just fill in the iframe and just simply displaying the report. And that's kind of the idea of embedding. Most organizations who work pure, like very in-depth embedding solutions, to your point,
Yep.
they're more developer than report developer, if that makes sense, right?
Yes.
So
Correct.
yeah,
There's a heavy
there's
developer
have
influence on
usually
like making it work
right.
correctly.
And
Yes.
usually it's more client facing. We have our external tenants or we have the external clients. And then you have the people who are just dumb and they publish the web without the secure. And they just say, well, that's an easy way to get that available to everyone in the organization, not realizing that they have just made all their internal data available when anyone can scrape their
Yes.
Power BI URL and it's available. Even if they go, no one has the URL, well, one person shares it, or people have found ways to scrape all the available published web URLs. Don't do that. Don't do that unless you're sharing baseball data. Don't do that. But I think the misnomer is to your point. Most people think I'm embedding a report or securely embedding a report. I don't have the ability, in a sense, they don't think of what you're talking about. I can securely embed the model and the underlying data,
Yes.
which opens up a lot of features. Most organizations that
Yes.
I work with, when they say embedding, they're embedding in SharePoint, they're embedding in Teams. They have their own internal application. They want to display a report internally for the organization. And Mike, you're talking about another level here of, to use the aforementioned onion, on the other use
Yes.
cases here,
Yes.
because I'm going off the mailbag, and then I know I'll let you drive, let you spin.
Keep going,
But
Tommy. You're going. You're great.
the user here, I'm curious, as I always, whenever I look at the questions people ask us, I'm thinking about what's their situation, where did this question come from, like what they're probably something's going on in their organization that they have a project on, or there's a conflict. And to me, I'm looking at this person and I hear someone just basically saying, I need to get this data out to a lot of people, and I need to do this
Mhm.
without a lot of peer development work. And that's where that question comes from. But Mike, I'll stop there because I want to hear from you. I know you built some products, and I'm curious, why would someone take the next step outside of SharePoint and Teams? Because one, if I have Power BI, I'm always going to drive
Yep.
people to Power BI. Um,
Sure.
so what are the other, situations here?
What,
Yeah.
yeah. What's the big move? So
What's the
this
benefit?
is going to come out this is going to come out in probably two different points. The first point is you're removing yourself away from a lot of the Power BI auto built things that just makes it easier for you.
Yes.
So there's they have the portal, they have a lot of these things that are there that are easy to use, a lot of bookmark, all these things that you can kind of get for free because you're using PowerBI.com. There's a lot of things you have to rebuild. Embedding is very easy to do. The complicated part is the management of the authorization part. And so let me explain what I mean by that. When you publish a report to the web, you have the report, which is an item. You have potentially bookmarks you want to use against that item. You have multiple users who may or may not have access to the item. You may have rel of security you want to apply to the item. The embedding is simple. The management of all the data and the objects of who has the right permissions to the right things. Can I look at this report? Am I able to make a copy of it? Do I want to build another one? Do I want to be able to edit this report? There's a lot of other data points that are being used to make the experience really good, right? You have to manage that. So the easy part is embedding. The more difficult part is getting the right authorization patterns that let users create, generate, and reuse content that you embed. So that's the hard part. What are the advantages of going towards embedding? Embedding allows you to authenticate with anything you want. So one of the major value adds, I think, here is when you go to pure Power BI embedding, you have full control of the rel of security. You can do multiple key partitioning. You can do advanced security settings, but you also don't need any users in your Entra ID. A lot of organizations have this really hard line as to, I need to share data with my external customers, but I can't add them into my guest network into our Entra ID. They just don't want to do it. And I agree.
All the time.
You shouldn't be bloating your Power BI or your Entra ID tenant with a whole bunch of guest users to use your apps or to share
Mhm.
data with them. That doesn't make sense. So the biggest advantage I see here with embedding is you're able to roll your own security. You can use Azure B2C. You can use Google Analytics or Google
Yeah.
Sign In. You can use whatever you want. You can use GitHub. You can use anything you want. If it has an identity provider, you can get it out of there and use it. A lot of companies have existing applications with an identity provider already
Right.
built in. It's already there
Their own
because you
single
have
sign-on.
to your solution. So in lieu of that, right, in lieu of having that solution already pre-built for you there, you have to do a build around how do you manage that that group of users with that identity, and
Well,
that's
you get
the key part.
You get the Ferrari, but it is stick shift. And I mean, that's what you're telling me here, because you have all the capabilities, but you better dang well know how to drive that, because you
Yes,
don't have that net, right? Because you got to really all build that. And again, I'm failing to see, Mike, though, unless I am publishing this for a client where I already have the set users, where does something else come into play, or where does the added benefit, right?
Yeah.
Outside of the identity, right?
Well,
Because
let's
the identity alone is a good point.
correct.
That's
It's
not all.
really
That's not
solid.
that's
But
a really
usually
solid one, but that's
that's
not
a
the only case.
it's a typical stopping point for most. So that is probably the
Yes,
most common
yes.
story, the stopping point of most organizations around doing embedding. Look, we want to do embedding with PowerBI.com. It makes a lot of sense. Let's do it. Great. You're going to need to add all these new users into your entry. And you're like, nope, that's not acceptable. We can't do that.
Right.
So the
Right.
big advantage of this is roll your own security. Let's also think about the cost advantages of this as well. So I'm paying for an F2 up to
Okay.
an F whatever SKU it as well. When you move from user-based licensing, when you bring users into your Power BI environment, you need to pay for licensing for them to use the workspace. So if your external sharing experience is, I will make a workspace and I will add those users to my Entra ID, any users coming into that workspace, unless it's on an F64, you need to pay for a pro license for them to go use that. And that's not a great experience for those users and price points. So now when you do embedding, you now have control of, I'm paying for dedicated capacity. And if you build good models, efficient design things, you can service models to a much higher audience. So let me give you an example here. I run the website themes.powerbi.tips. Themes.powerbi.tips renders a real visual for users when they use the tool. You go to the bar chart, you can
Sure.
set the properties of the theme file for the bar chart, and your bar chart renders for you a sample report. It's a sample bar chart. My model is very efficient, and I service well over 3,000 plus users a month on these calls to go get these visuals out on an F2. So the user base is really large on a very cost-efficient SKU. And so that is an advantage here as well, is you can then better tune your financial model around getting the right users, the right models at the right time for not paying a per user licensing. So there's actually a great reduction there on the licensing agreement as well. And you can, the other advantage I would also argue here too is there's a lot of companies out there that have built accelerators to make the solution easy to use, right? Embedding is not easy. It's quite difficult. You can actually go into the open marketplace and find real solutions. Mine happens to be one of many that are out there, and it's called Intelexos. And you can do a lot of these other things. So, for example, what we've built, in addition to just rendering the report, we've built copy report, edit report, build paginated reports, data exploration, data shares. So our embedded solution actually incorporates a lot of other what we think are really valuable feature sets that companies will want to use, all built on Fabric. It's on top of the Fabric ecosystem. And so you license our application that sits on top of Power BI, your FSKU, and then you turn on the FSKU, you pay for it, you license our software, and then from there, you have access to all these really rich features, things that even PowerBI.com doesn't give you.
I would argue, though, Mike, that I'm hearing great use cases, but very specific use cases, right? So, like to your point, the Power BI tips, it's a great use case, not everyone has a Power BI tips type of website or theme
But
designer
everyone
type of
wants to share
website.
data externally. Like, so
Sure.
there's
Well,
there's a maturity curve in every organization. And this is how I see it. You start with internally, we need to figure out, okay, what are we doing now? Let's move away from SSRS. Let's move away from Excel a little bit. Let's incorporate Power BI. You find wins internal to your organization around using those features. Great. Love it. The next step is your business is almost always, and there's a lot of business, you're almost always working with other vendors, suppliers, and other people who need your data. And so it's happening. People are going to your Power BI reports, they're exporting large chunks of data, and they're sending it via email to your customers or your vendors or whatever. You have to share data. The Power BI embedded experience is a much more catered experience to helping you share and distribute data external to your organization. And I would, again, I'm comfortable with it, but I would choose anytime I'm sharing data externally, I'm always using an embedded solution to do so.
really.
100%. It's so much easier. There's so much extra friction and licensing and cost by letting
Yeah,
external
because
users into your tenant.
but it's part of, I think if you're
It's
doing
just tricky.
No, honestly, this is where I would agree with you, because anytime I've seen any embedded solution, or no, actually, let me even make that simpler to say.
Sure.
Anytime I've seen an organization have a need to share data outside their own organization,
Love this. Yep. Keep
and
going.
usually
Yep.
B2B,
Correct.
there's
B2B.
there's short-term what people think,
Yep.
but I always have people, because it always happens, is think about the scalability of whatever they
Correct.
decide to do. And
Yes.
this is the critical point for me, Mike, because
Yes.
I had organizations like, well, we only have 5 people right now, so
Yeah.
why do we have to set this up? Like,
I only send
is that
3
your
reports a
plan?
week.
6?
I only send 3 reports a week.
Right.
That's all I got.
Right.
But it starts with 3
but
reports. But when does it turn into
exactly.
like 15 reports
Because
and
I always
more
ask them,
reports?
like, is your plan to have 5 users in a year from now? They're like, well, no, because we can make some money off this and we make it
Bingo.
people. Okay. It's like,
Correct.
okay, does this work for 5 people? Yes. I would say if you're only going to have, 5
Does it work for
users, whatever the
15?
case is,
Does it work for
sure.
20?
Sharing the fabric, the workspace
Exactly.
is great, but odds are that's not what it stays with. And
Correct.
I think embedded, especially, I think a lot of things we do are this type of situation, but none more than embedding, because it's so hard to change that once you start. So
Yes.
whatever solution you do, it really is always, it's always the case of, let's say you decide to do the single users in a workspace. Fine.
Mhm.
Once you want to change that, that's a tough thing to do once you have that set up, once that ball's in motion.
Yep.
And honestly, yeah. So I completely see this where, and this is what I always push people. I always ask them, what's the plan a year from now?
Yep.
Or 6 months from now?
It's the adoption curve, right?
Mhm.
You first adopt Power BI, you get comfortable with that solution, you start having successes and wins internal to your company with
Mhm.
internal data. Everyone loves it. They're like, this is working for us. It's making it easier. We're automating a ton of data loading.
Right.
Love it. That's the great step. But as organizations mature, they're going to need to share data externally outside of that. And the way the Power BI environment
Yeah.
does it is just not as easy. And again, Microsoft made Power BI embedded for this exact reason. And the embedded accelerators is the sweet spot because you can get the full embedded multiple year development cycle on embedded solutions and start them in less than an hour. Like you can go from zero embedding to embedding in minutes almost. Like, so I've done these deployments with customers. I've done well over 50 plus custom embedded solutions, multiple environments, dev test prods, all the things. So I've taken all these learnings of like what people are telling me that is useful and valuable to them. I've distilled them all down into, here's a product off the shelf. Go to the Azure Marketplace, click get now. It will install everything you need. It runs in your own infrastructure. I'm not privy to any of that information. It comes right off of the store. So this is where our product Intellexes, I think, really shines, is we've really tried to provide the white glove experience. Another thing, Tommy, I'll point out here, let's imagine you want some custom branding. Companies want to use Power BI, but they don't want to tout the fact that Power BI labeling is all over the product. So you need custom label branded solutions. And that's what these embedded accelerators do. Like, I don't want to have the log. I don't want to go to app.powerbi.com. I want to go to reports.puliabi.com. Like, that's what I want to go to. You can't change the domain name in powerbi.com. It just does not happen. So
Yeah.
what this is giving you, it's giving you a high level of white labeling, customization to really, and the end of the day here is,
And
think about making your customers sticky to you. You give them good data. Like every product I've ever used, Tommy, on social media to try and get data into stuff, it's a pain to get data out of stuff. The sooner you can make getting data out of your systems or working with data in your systems a dream, the more your customers are going to love you, and they're never going to leave, because the next guy who doesn't give them that experience,
right.
they will not leave. They will want the UI and make it pretty, but at the end of the day, if they can't get their hands on the data they need to do their job or their business, that's a no-go for me. And no amount of AI you can throw at that will give them the data they need.
Yeah.
This is your proprietary information.
Well, yeah, and I know we're getting to this. I've really enjoyed having this conversation because again, a lot of people mistake not just the complexity of it, but again, what they're trying to do with it. And I think I'm glad that you and I are leaning that way, where if you are planning some sort of embedding, if there's a need for that, for client facing, whatever the case may be, have what you need now, but understand what the company's trying to do with that. Because anytime you plan for the short term with embedding, it's going to fall on his face because it cannot scale. Usually,
you got to pick a scalable solution.
There are easy ways to get started right away. You could get you can give people access today and before lunch. You get people, but if your organization has a bigger plan for this product, usually it's a product that they're servicing here.
Correct.
What's
or
that
you have
plan?
an existing product that needs more data in it. Like, again, this is another one of these things. Like, you've got a data product that's doing things. You need a reporting. So I've done a lot of these too. There's an app that runs that does all the data things that's like actually generating the data. It's sitting somewhere on the back end. You need another reporting portal that helps all the analytics of it. So you don't need to build it back into your same product. You can add these accelerators on the side. So
it has, and I'll give you some flowers, and I don't like doing that often, but the Intelexus app is a great starter because previously, if you wanted an embedding solution like that, well, we're in it for 2 months before your boss sees anything.
Not even.
I'm saying previously.
No, I'm just saying the previous developments, I've seen companies spend anywhere between 6, 9, and 12 months of development time of trying to get the requirements together, to understand how it works, to build the features they want. And that the 6 month side of things is like, I'm just getting embedded stuff up and running in my application with permissions. And then you've got to figure out, how do I do the edit stuff? How do I build automatic paginated reports? How do I build
functionality and the features,
all the other things?
And I think that's usually why people go to the short term, because like, listen, I know we need to do the embedded solution, and I know they want to get 100 people on here. But my boss is going to kill me, and no one's going to be happy if I tell them 6 months before they even see anything.
This is why the accelerators are so useful. They've already done a lot of the legwork, and it's just pull it off the shelf, light it up, and get going. That's why it's such a good. So this is a great topic.
Yep.
I do want to cover off on the last couple questions here. I want to make sure I directly answer every question here. Security wise, is embedded any safer when it comes to sharing with the web? The answer is no. You don't get row level security. It is a publish to web is whatever they see, they can see in the web. If you need security, you're going to need to think about the embedded, the custom embedding solutions, and adding your own row level security. So it's not any, I'll call quote unquote safer. You're still using HTTPS to service the data. All that is standard. It's standard web protocols. All that is the same level of secure. It's the difference of, are you needing to add row level security, and publish to web isn't more safer when you're going to share with public. You really do want to have a layer of authentication on top of your application, on top of the reporting.
1000%.
Is there a way to get row level details into publish to web? So can we get row level security details into publish to web? No, the answer is directly no. Publish to web does not support row level security into that reporting. Secure publish to web, I believe, passes the credentials from users into the report. And so if you did have row level security applied, secure embed will at least allow users to sign in order to see the report with some level of security there. So that one would be one that would be an option. But again, you now need to add every user who needs to see the report into your Entra ID. And if you're a guest, you're going to have a really weird like URL or email address name of them. And you're going to have to make sure you add that really complicated email address into the report. So that's another one that you have to be mindful of. So the answer is directly kind of no there. Are there any measures one can take to make it more secure for embedding or disabling URL filters, query parameters, and underlining data if it's granular? If you're using embedded, so publish to web, you can use URL parameters. There is no guarantee that those will be more or less safe. They're just going to assume everything you publish in publish to web is 100% exposed to the internet, all the report. You're not going to use URL parameters. You cannot change those to have it. You can't restrict them when you're using publish to web. The only way you can add security is apply the security before the report is data rendered. And what I mean by that is that's the whole row level security, adding the additional layer of when you ask for the model and report to be rendered, you need to give the credentials of the user to the model, pre-render the data, and have it sent through the embedded experience. So embedded, yes. Publish to web, no. So I think we've answered all the direct questions. Does that cover everything?
I think we're perfect, man.
Okay, good. Wow, great topic. I love this topic. As you can tell, I'm slightly passionate about embedding. I think this is so cool. I think this is really what people need. And also, honestly, Tommy, I love PowerBI.com, but it's a bit busy, in my opinion.
Oh, this is where we differ.
I think in the way that, Tommy, you say there's so much training that needs to happen inside PowerBI.com, I kind of agree. You do need to tell people how it works. You do need to get people to navigate through the system. Sometimes people just want go to URL, see list of reports, click on report. And so I do think that embedded also gives the ability to really simplify the user's experience about how do I want to go see a list of reports and get them to my eyeballs, right? And I do think you can have direct links, you can have workspaces, but PowerBI.com has a lot of additional features that are shown to standard. You get a pro license, there's a lot of other buttons you can click on. Useful, yes, but a lot of other things. I think sometimes in organizations, there is still a need for super simple, super easy to get access to. Here's the list of reports, just go get them. Okay.
Another day, another topic.
Another topic.
I like that. I like that. But no, great conversation today.
Awesome. Well, thank you all very much for listening today. This has been a super fun episode. If you like this, if you want to hear more about embedding, let us know in the comments. What is not clear to you? If we said something that didn't make sense, let us know in the comments. We will be happy to watch them. Tommy and I watch the comments on the YouTube channel. We'll respond if we can. And if we need another topic, we'll do it again. I think this is another great topic to continually unpacking with the community. There's a lot of opportunities for organizations to deeply integrate Power BI into their apps and their applications using embedded. 100%. Off-the-shelf solutions are a great accelerator. It gets you started right away, but you can also build highly customized solutions in your product that makes your customers sticky. That's the story here for me. Make your customers love you with the data you provide. That's what embedding is for me. That's what I think that's exactly why you do this. Anyways, Tommy, where else can you find the podcast?
Well, you can find us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. Make sure to subscribe and leave a rating. It helps us out a ton. Do you have a question, idea, or topic that you want us to talk about in a future episode? Head over to powerbi.tips/podcast to leave your name and a great question. And finally, join us live every Tuesday and Thursday, 7:30 a.m. Central, and join the conversation on all PowerBI.tips social media channels.
Thank you all so much, and we'll see you next time.
Explicit measures, pump it up, be it high. Tommy and Mike lighting up the sky. Dance to the data, laughs in the mix. Fabric and AI, get your fix.